People say heartbreak feels like drowning. They're wrong, it's worse. You stay alive just enough to remember how good breathing once felt. Eli hadn't returned my calls for 5 days. Not that I was counting, except I was right down to the hours, the minutes, the exact second when busy at work stopped sounding like a reason and started tasting like a lie. The irony? I was the one who helped him get that damn promotion. Late nights rehearsing his pitch, calming his nerves before the big meeting, making sure his tie matched his suit and his confidence. Now, that same job had become his alibi. Tonight, I saw him, not at work, at a cafe on 7th Avenue, actually laughing with someone else. I stood outside the glass window, New York wind cutting into my face, my reflection trembling against the rain-speckled pane. Inside, Eli leaned forward, the way he used to with me. His lips curved into that half-smile that had once undone every defense I ever built. The man sitting across from him, tall, blonde, sharp suit, touched Eli's wrist, and Eli didn't pull away. I could have walked away, should have, but my heart, pathetic as always, dragged me right through that door. "Hey!" I said, voice dry as sandpaper. Eli froze. The blonde looked up, confused, then glanced between us with the faintest smirk before standing to leave. "I'll call you," he said to Eli, and I swear I heard the word baby hiding behind the polite tone. When the door closed behind him, Eli finally looked at me. "Liam, what are you doing here?" "Funny?" I said, shoving my hands in my pockets to stop them from shaking. "I could ask you the same." He sighed, the sound tired, rehearsed. "It's not what it looks like, right?" I said. "Because you were just interviewing him for a new position?" Over lattes and flirty smiles. "Liam, no, don't," I snapped. "Don't say my name like that. Not when you're sitting here pretending I don't exist outside your schedule." He looked around, embarrassed. The cafe was quiet now. Even the barista had stopped pretending not to listen. "Can we talk somewhere else?" he asked. I laughed, the kind that hurts on its way out. "You mean like your apartment?" "Oh wait, that's not a good time, right?" The silence that followed was thick enough to drown in. Finally, Eli stood up, brushing invisible dust off his coat. "I'll call you later," he said softly, and he left, just like that. No explanations, no goodbye, only the ghost of his cologne and the faint chime of the door behind him. The next few days blurred. I worked, slept badly, and tried not to check my phone. Of course, I failed miserably. Every vibration, every notification, every meaningless spam message made my heart jump like a fool waiting for mercy. When he finally texted, "Can we talk?" I stared at it for an hour before replying, "No need. I understand now." But understanding didn't mean peace. It meant pain had a name, and that name was still Eli. A week later, I found the ring. It had been sitting in the small ceramic dish on my nightstand, the one he'd bought us at that weekend market in Brooklyn. I'd forgotten how the metal glowed under light, subtle and simple, like him on the day he gave it to me. Not a promise, he'd said. Just a reminder of what I didn't know anymore. I took it with me that evening, tucked inside my jacket pocket. I wasn't sure what I wanted: closure, maybe, or just the courage to stop waiting for him. When I reached his office building, the street was packed. Rush hour. People flooding the sidewalks, cabs honking, someone shouting into a phone. The chaos of the city felt almost merciful. It meant no one would notice me fall apart. Eli was outside, talking to the same man from the cafe. Their heads leaned close, too close. I didn't think I just walked straight toward them. "Eli," I called out. He turned, startled. The other man frowned, muttered something, and stepped aside. I reached into my pocket and held up the ring. "You forgot this." He stared at it like it burned. "Liam, don't, it's fine," I said, smiling too brightly. "I get it. You're busy. You've moved on. Congratulations, really?" His throat worked. His eyes darted to the man standing nearby, then back to me. "It's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is," I said. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you used work as an excuse to avoid me, and now my voice broke." Now you're smiling with someone else. The crowd moved around us like a river, but in that instant, everything else blurred. He reached for me too late. I dropped the ring into his hand. You don't owe me anything. And then I turned to leave. Behind me, I heard it. A sound I'd never expected, not from him. A choked sob. When I looked back, Eli was crying. Not the quiet, restrained kind. The real kind, the kind that tears through you from somewhere deep, raw, and human. People stopped to stare. Some whispered. A few smiled awkwardly. But Eli didn't care. He stood there, in the middle of the crowded street, clutching the ring like it was air, eyes red and wet and desperate. Liam, he said, voice cracking, please, don't go. I froze. And for the first time, I saw it, the truth in his face. The fear, the regret, the love he'd been too afraid to show. But it was too late, wasn't it? He found me later that night, sitting on the bench near the river, the same spot where we'd shared our first kiss 2 years ago. Can I sit? He asked. I didn't look at him. You already are. He let out a shaky laugh, the kind that's half relief, half exhaustion. You're still mad. I'm tired, I said simply. He nodded, staring out at the dark water. I deserve that. Silence stretched between us, thick with everything we hadn't said. Then he whispered, it wasn't what you thought, Lee. That guy, he's my client. I was trying to close a deal. He made a move and I froze. I didn't stop him. That's on me. I turned to him, eyes narrow. You didn't stop him? He winced. I didn't want to make a scene. I thought it didn't matter. But it did. Because it made you think you didn't matter. And that's the worst thing I've ever done. Something in his voice cracked, that same tremor I'd heard in the street. Real, unpolished, honest. I wanted to stay angry. God, I wanted to. But love is cruel that way. It doesn't always need permission to forgive. I leaned back, exhaling. You should have told me. I was scared, he said. Scared you'd think I was lying. Scared I'd lose you before I even got the words out. Newsflash, I said softly. You almost did. We sat there, the city humming around us, the river catching stray reflections of light. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the ring. Can I? He asked. I didn't answer. But when he took my hand, I didn't pull away either. The metal was cold against my skin, but the warmth in his fingers made up for it. This time, he said quietly, it's not a reminder, it's a promise. The next morning, sunlight poured through my apartment window like it had something to prove, too bright, too insistent, as if the world wanted me to wake up and face everything I wasn't ready to. Eli had texted late last night. Thank you for staying. I know I don't deserve another chance, but I'll spend every day proving I do. I stared at that message for a long time. Not because I didn't believe him, but because I was terrified that I still wanted to. At work, I tried to keep busy. Emails, meetings, endless coffee refills. Still, every time my phone buzzed, my pulse jumped like it had a memory of its own. By noon, I gave up pretending. When I finally texted him, lunch, his reply came so fast it felt like he'd been holding his phone, waiting. Name the place. I'll be there. We met at the same cafe. Not on purpose, maybe on instinct. Maybe because neither of us was ready to erase that place from our story. He was already there when I walked in, standing by the window. The morning crowd had thinned. The barista gave me a sympathetic smile, probably remembering our argument a week ago. Eli looked different somehow. Not in appearance, still the same tousled dark hair, the same tie slightly off-center, but in posture. Less guarded, almost fragile. Hey, he said softly. Hey. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The quiet wasn't awkward, it was heavy, full of words neither of us had figured out how to say. He gestured to the chair opposite. Sit. I did. Then he said the one thing I didn't expect. You were right. I blinked. About what? Everything. About me hiding behind work. About not being present. About using stress as an excuse to avoid things I didn't want to face. He exhaled, voice trembling slightly. You didn't deserve that. I didn't answer right away. My instinct was to retreat, to protect myself from getting hurt again. But the raw honesty in his eyes, the kind that can't be rehearsed, cracked something inside me. "I wanted to believe you," I said finally. "But when you started shutting me out, it felt like watching someone turn off the lights one by one, until I didn't know where to stand anymore." He nodded slowly, eyes glistening. "I was afraid if I brought you into my chaos, you'd leave." "Eli," I said quietly, "you made me leave by keeping me out." He winced, not dramatically, but like the truth itself had teeth. Then, after a long pause, he whispered, "I want to fix that. I just don't know how." We didn't fix it that day, but we stayed. We really talked for the first time in months. About everything. His overbearing boss, my freelance projects, our friends, even the dog we talked about adopting one day. It was tentative at first, like two people learning a language they used to be fluent in. But slowly, the rhythm came back, the teasing, the warmth, the laughter we'd both forgotten we were capable of. When we left the cafe, he walked beside me instead of ahead of me. Small thing, but it mattered. At the crosswalk, he reached out, fingers brushing mine. He didn't grab, didn't assume. Just a gentle, questioning touch, asking permission. I let his hand rest there. For now, that was enough. Over the next few weeks, Eli kept his word. He showed up. For real this time. He'd stop by my office with coffee, wait outside the bookstore when I worked late shifts, send small messages that didn't demand a reply. "Hope your day wasn't awful. Made pasta. Saved you some. I miss your sarcasm." He didn't push for forgiveness. He just earned it, one quiet gesture at a time. And me? I tried to resist, to keep my guard up. But there's something disarming about someone who finally chooses you not out of guilt, but because they've learned what losing you really means. One Friday evening, he invited me to his place. It wasn't a grand gesture, no flowers, no music, just him cooking dinner in the small kitchen we once called ours. The smell of garlic and butter filled the air, familiar and warm. "Still can't cook without nearly burning the pan, huh?" I teased, leaning against the counter. He grinned sheepishly. "Some things never change." Apparently not. We stood there, smiling, the kind of quiet that doesn't need filling. For a second, it almost felt like before. Then his expression softened. "Liam, I need to tell you something." I turned to face him. "Okay." He set down the spoon, wiped his hands, and looked straight at me. "After you left that day, when I cried in the street, I wasn't crying because you gave back the ring. I was crying because I realized how easily I'd taken you for granted. You gave me everything, your time, your trust, your heart, and I treated it like it would always be there waiting." His voice broke a little. It hit me that love doesn't wait forever. And that terrified me. For a long moment, I couldn't speak. The sincerity in his face was almost too much, the kind that forces you to choose between protecting your pride and protecting the person in front of you. I took a slow breath. "You're right. Love doesn't wait. But sometimes, it forgives." He looked at me, hope flickering like a small flame behind his eyes. "Does it?" "I don't know," I admitted. "But I'm willing to find out." That night, we didn't talk about the past anymore. We watched a movie, something forgettable, loud enough to fill the silence, and sat on opposite ends of the couch. Halfway through, his hand brushed mine. Neither of us pulled away. Outside, rain started to fall, soft and steady against the windows. He glanced at me. "Remember that night we got stuck in the storm on our way back from the lake?" I smiled faintly. "You were convinced the car would flood. I was convinced you'd never stop laughing at me. You were wearing white jeans. In a thunderstorm. I had to." He laughed, the sound low and genuine. It echoed through the apartment like something finally coming home. By the time the movie ended, the city outside was asleep. I got up to leave, grabbing my jacket. "I should go." He walked me to the door, hand resting on the frame. "Can I ask something?" "Depends. Do I get to see you tomorrow?" I hesitated, then smiled. "You might." He grinned. "I'll take might. It's better than never." As I stepped into the hallway, he called out softly, "Liam." I turned. He didn't move closer, didn't reach for me this time. Just looked at me with quiet certainty. "Thank you for giving me a second chance to do this right." I wanted to tell him I hadn't given him anything yet, that forgiveness wasn't a gift but a process. But the truth was simpler. I wanted to believe in him again. "Don't waste it," I said. Then I left, but for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I was running away. Days turned into weeks. Some things got better. Some didn't. Trust wasn't rebuilt overnight. There were moments I still doubted him, like when he worked late and forgot to text, or when I caught the hesitation in his voice answering a call. But now he noticed. He'd stop what he was doing, look me in the eye and say, "I'm here. I promise." And somehow that mattered. Winter came early that year. New York turned into a blur of white and gray snow piling up on fire escapes, breath visible in the air, the city softening around the edges. One evening, Eli asked me to meet him in Central Park. When I got there, he was standing by the fountain, bundled in a navy coat, cheeks flushed red from the cold. The sky above was bruised with twilight, snow falling in lazy spirals. "Hey," I said, walking up. "What's this about?" He smiled nervously. "Just wanted to show you something." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I froze. "Eli, it's not what you think," he said quickly, opening it to reveal a key. My confusion must have shown because he laughed. "It's for the new place. I got a smaller apartment downtown. Closer to you. Closer to us." I blinked. "You moved?" "Yeah. The old one had too many ghosts. I figured if we're starting over, I should too." The snow fell harder, catching in his hair, his lashes. For a second, he looked like something out of a movie, the kind that ends with a line that stays with you forever. "Eli," I said quietly, "why are you doing all this?" He took a step closer, voice barely above a whisper. "Because I don't ever want you to doubt again that I choose you every single day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." My throat tightened. He held out the key. "Come see it. No promises, no pressure. Just a place where you don't have to wonder if you belong." I stared at him for a long time, the man who'd once broken me and was now trying to rebuild something fragile, beautiful, and painfully real. Then I reached out and took the key. "Okay," I said. "Show me." His new apartment was small, warm, and full of light. There were still unpacked boxes, a half-finished bookshelf, and a plant I was certain would die in 2 days. But on the counter, I noticed something, a small frame, holding a photo of us from 2 summers ago. Me laughing mid-sentence. Him looking at me instead of the camera. I swallowed hard. "You kept this?" He nodded. "It's the only thing that's ever made this city feel like home." Something in my chest cracked open, then slow, deliberate, unstoppable. I turned toward him. "You really mean it, don't you?" "I do," he said softly. "I always did. I just forgot how to show it." He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating off him despite the cold still clinging to my coat. For a heartbeat, we just stood there, 2 people who'd been broken, stitched together again by time, truth, and the terrifying courage to try once more. Then, without a word, I leaned in. And this time, when his lips met mine, there was no confusion, no hesitation, just the quiet, steady certainty of something found after being lost too long. Snow fell for 3 straight days. The city slowed down, quieter than I'd ever seen it. Cabs moved like yellow ghosts through the blur, and even the usual street noise seemed softened, wrapped in white. Eli and I had spent the week finding a rhythm again, slow mornings, takeout dinners, moments of easy silence that didn't demand explanation. We were learning to exist in the same space without fear. And yet, something in him felt distant lately. Not cold, just preoccupied. One night, as we sat together on his couch, I noticed him staring at his phone, jaw tight, screen lighting up with a name I didn't recognize. "Who's Alex?" I asked before I could stop myself. He froze for half a second too long. "Just someone from work." "Someone from work?" I repeated, careful not to let the words shake. "Is that the same someone from work you used to have coffee with?" His eyes widened. "Liam, no, it's not like that." "Then what's it like?" He sighed, setting the phone down. "It's a client." I didn't mention it because I knew how it would sound, and I didn't want to start another fight. I wanted to believe him, I really did. But a part of me, the bruised part still healing from before, flinched at the possibility of being wrong again. Eli, I said quietly, trust doesn't mean never fighting. It means not hiding. He looked at me then, guilt flickering behind his eyes. You're right. I'm sorry. I'll show you. I'll call him right now if you want. But I shook my head. That's not the point. I don't want proof. I want honesty before I have to ask. The silence that followed wasn't angry, it was tired, full of the weight of two people still learning how to be okay. The next day, Eli had an early meeting. He kissed my cheek before leaving, murmured, "See you tonight," like a promise. Except he didn't show up. 9 o'clock, 10, midnight, no call, no text. Just a city outside my window that didn't care how many times I checked my phone. By 2 in the morning, I gave up waiting. I threw on a coat and walked. Nowhere specific, just through the sleeping streets, down to the river where we'd once made promises that still haunted the air. The wind was brutal, slicing through my jacket, but I barely felt it. My thoughts were louder. What if I was wrong to trust him again? What if love was just an endless loop of forgiveness and regret? I was halfway through convincing myself I'd been a fool when headlights flashed behind me. A car pulled up, and a familiar voice called out, "Liam." I turned. Eli was there, stepping out, breath visible in the cold, face flushed from running. "Where have you been?" I asked, the words sharper than I meant. He looked wrecked, hair tousled, eyes rimmed red. "The meeting ran late. My phone died. When I finally got home and you weren't there, I panicked. I drove everywhere looking for you. You could have borrowed a phone." "I know," he said softly. "I messed up. Again." I wanted to stay angry, to keep my distance. But he took another step forward, snow crunching under his shoes, voice trembling. "Liam, please. I know I don't deserve your patience, but I swear to you this time, it wasn't what it looked like. I'm not running anymore. Not from work. Not from you. Not from the mess I made." He exhaled shakily. "If you tell me right now that it's over, I'll understand. But if there's even a small part of you that still believes in us, I'll spend the rest of my life making sure I never give you another reason to doubt." I looked at him, really looked, and for once, saw not the man who'd hurt me, but the one who was terrified of losing me again. The anger melted before I could hold onto it. I stepped closer until we were standing an inch apart. "You're exhausting," I said, voice barely above a whisper. He laughed through a tear. "You love it." "Unfortunately," I said, a small smile breaking through. He reached out, hesitating. "May I?" I nodded. His hand found mine, warm despite the cold. "I'm still learning," he said quietly. "How to be better. How to stay. But I promise I'm learning for you." The weeks that followed were quieter, steadier. Trust wasn't a single grand gesture, it was 1,000 small ones. It was him sending a photo when he said he'd be late, me leaving a note on the counter before heading out, both of us choosing not to walk away when things got hard. We even started rebuilding our old traditions: Saturday breakfasts at the diner on 5th, movie nights with terrible popcorn, lazy Sunday walks through the park. And every time he smiled, I caught glimpses of the boy I'd fallen for. Only now he was trying. That made all the difference. One evening in March, Eli asked me to meet him after work. When I arrived, he was waiting on the Brooklyn Bridge, leaning against the railing, wind tugging at his hair. The skyline behind him glowed gold and violet, the river below catching the city's reflection like liquid glass. "Hey," I said, "what's the occasion?" He smiled. "Just wanted you to see something." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the same small velvet box as before. I groaned, half laughing. "Eli, if that's another key, I'm running this time." He chuckled, shaking his head. "Not a key." Then he opened it. Inside was the ring, the same one I'd returned that night in the street. Only now, the inside of the band was engraved. 3 words, this time, always. I froze. He took a slow breath. "It's not about promises or perfect endings. It's about the hard parts, the fights, the doubts, the nights we almost gave up. Because through all of it, I never stopped wanting to come home to you. His voice cracked just a little. I don't need forever. I just need today and every today after that, if you'll have me. The wind picked up, carrying the sound of traffic, laughter, the heartbeat of the city that had witnessed everything we'd survived. I swallowed hard. You sure you want to risk it again? He smiled softly. With you? Every time. And before I could answer, he slipped the ring gently onto my finger, not as a plea, not as a cage, but as something simple and real, a beginning. We stood there, watching the city lights shimmer across the water. The same city that had seen us break apart now held us together again. I rested my head against his shoulder. You know, people are going to stare. Let them, he said. We earned this. I laughed quietly. You always know what to say, don't you? Only when it's about you. He turned toward me, eyes soft, wind tugging at the corner of his smile. Liam. Yeah. Thank you. For not walking away when I gave you every reason to. I looked at him, the man who'd once used work to hide, who now stood here, open and unafraid, holding my hand like it meant something sacred. I almost did, I admitted. But then I realized, love doesn't end when someone hurts you. It ends when you stop believing they can do better. And somehow I still believed. He blinked fast, laughter catching on a breath that was almost a sob. You're really something, you know that? So I've been told, I teased. He grinned, pulling me closer. Remind me to never let you go again. Remind me to make you work for it. We both laughed, not the bitter, broken kind we used to share, but the easy, joyful kind that only comes after surviving the worst and finding each other anyway. The months that followed passed quietly. There were no grand declarations, no sudden twists, just life. Real, messy, wonderful life. We learned to disagree without breaking, to talk instead of assume, to hold space for each other's fears. And on days when work pulled him away, he'd leave a note on the fridge. Still choosing you. Every time I read it, I smiled. Because that was what love really was, not the fireworks, not the drama, but the quiet, steady choice to stay. 1 year later, on a warm evening in June, we returned to that same bridge, this time not to fix what was broken, but to celebrate what we'd rebuilt. The city glowed around us, and for once, there was no fear, no doubt, only the calm certainty of two people who'd made it through. I leaned on the railing, watching the lights flicker across the river. You ever think about how different things could have been? Eli nodded, sliding his hand into mine. Every day. But then I remember we're exactly where we're supposed to be. I turned to him, heart full. And where's that? He smiled. Here. With you. And as the wind carried our laughter across the water, I realized something simple but true. Love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone who's willing to stay and fight for you, even when it's hard. He used work as an excuse once. Now he used love as a reason. And that, I thought, was the real miracle. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.